Hello, I am your host, Kathy Chester, and welcome to the Move It or Lose It podcast, a podcast about all things that move the mind, body, and soul. The Move It or Lose It podcast is for information, awareness, and inspirational purposes only. I am not a doctor, and I don't even play one on TV, so please consult your doctor before making any medical decisions. The views expressed by advertisers, guests, or contributors are their opinions and not necessarily the views of the Move It or Lose It podcast. Hey guys, welcome to another interview with Move It or Lose It. Today, obviously, I'm in my Michigan gear, so I'm very excited for our Michigan man. I'm interviewing today Brian Wallace, who is an ex-Michigan player and an alumni of Michigan University. Welcome, Brian.
Hi, how you doing, Kathy? Nice to meet you.
Very good. Thank you so much for being on Move It or Lose It.
Oh, thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So we both share a big love for Michigan, and so much so that I named my child Bo. And
Love it.
so you've got an amazing story that I'm very excited for all of our MSers to hear, because I think it is very inspirational in so many ways, but a lot for our MSers that have had it for years, and a lot for our newly diagnosed to understand that there's a lot with this disease, but it is not a death sentence. So, Brian, I want you to tell our listeners what life was like for you before diagnosis, because you had a lot going on.
Yeah, I did. Before diagnosis, I got diagnosed when I was 27 years old. Before that, I had a great childhood. I grew up with two great parents, awesome brother. Me and him are still close to this day. Both of my parents have passed away. But yeah, I played a lot of sports growing up. My mom and dad were very encouraging about trying different sports and different things. So I played baseball and hockey. I got into hockey when I was about 5 years old. Loved the sport. Did very well at it. I wanted to play football, but I was too fat. I wasn't fat, but I was just a big kid. I was always bigger than every kid in my class. And they had a weight limit back then, like 120 pounds, and I was probably like 140. And there's no way in the world I was going to be able to lose the weight to play. Uh, so I was never even able to play football. So I played hockey and really got into that sport. And then I got into high school, and the high school football coach saw how big I was, and he's like, "You play football?" I'm like, "No, I coach. I play hockey." He goes, "No, you're going to play football now." I'm like, "All right." So I went out on the football field, and I really liked it. I liked the kind of passion and all that. And then my sophomore year, I started getting recruited. I was starting on the varsity at the high school, and then my dad got sick and he passed away. I was 15 years old.
Wow.
Very, very bad time in my life.
Yeah.
But I was still going through the recruitment process. So
Okay.
I ended
It's
up
a tough age to lose your dad.
Yeah, it was terrible, and I didn't handle it very well. I just I didn't want to handle it, because I was 15 and I didn't want to listen to anybody, and I was mad at the world and mad at my dad. But I had a lot of my release playing sports. That's what I love to do, and instead of dealing with the death of my dad, I just go into a gym or go out and play baseball or football in the street.
Sure.
So then I was getting recruited pretty heavy. My junior and senior year, I was going all over the country. Me and my mom would go up to New York, visit Syracuse, Boston College. I was getting recruited by Miami of Florida, Florida State, Penn State, all the Big
What
Ten.
did that feel like?
It was a surreal, amazing experience, especially for someone that's 16, 17 years old. That really doesn't have a clue in life yet.
Yeah.
And you're getting wined and dined by every school in the country, and it was a pretty amazing experience. And I ended up visiting Notre Dame, Michigan.
I'm really glad you didn't go to Notre Dame.
Yeah, and and as a kid growing up, I grew up in Ohio, and I was a Buckeye fan, because you kind of have to be in Ohio.
Right.
And but I always loved Notre Dame. So I used to tell people when I was a little kid, I'm going to play football at Notre Dame, and they'd all just be like, "Yeah, all right, whatever." And so yeah, I that was a dream of mine. I went out there and visited
Yeah.
there, and I met Lou Holtz, and I did. It
Oh,
just didn't.
wow.
It just didn't feel right, and
Mhm.
so I ended up
Beautiful
visiting.
school.
It is a gorgeous
Mhm.
campus, and I didn't have a lot of luck with them when we played them.
Mhm.
I went 1-2 against them, 1-3,
Yeah.
1-3 against them. But
Mhm.
anyway, so I visited Michigan, Michigan State, Indiana, and Purdue, and Notre Dame, and I fell in love with both. But even before that, being an Ohio guy, I committed to Ohio State.
Mhm.
That's back when Earl Bruce was coaching.
Mhm.
And then when they fired Earl Bruce, that's kind of like when I like stepped back and said, all right, well, I don't know who's going to coach them. So
Right.
so I kind of decommitted, opened up my recruitment, and then John Cooper got the job, and I met him, and then he came over to my house and met me and my mom. And by the end of the meeting, it was about a 45-minute meeting. My mom looked at me when he left and said, "If you go to Ohio State, I'll never go watch you play." And I said,
Good
"Okay." Well,
mom.
I guess I'm not going to Ohio State, Mom.
Yeah.
So, and then when I was up in Ann Arbor, I met Bo, and I fell in love with the guy. He was an amazing human being, coach.
Yeah.
And that was it. I went to Michigan. I played there for 4 years. My freshman year, I got redshirted. My sophomore year, I ended up getting hurt. I fractured 2 vertebrae in my back.
Mm.
So I missed most of my sophomore year. I came back my junior year and senior year, and I played mostly special teams. My big claim to fame is my senior year. We were playing Minnesota, and the guy that was in front of me, Rob Doherty, great guy. Me and him were roommates in college on travel days. So he was starter in front of me, and he got dinged up in the game, and he came out in the end of the first quarter, second quarter. So I ended up playing like 3 quarters of that game. Had a great game. Made the Victors Club list.
Nice.
Scored out great. But that was my only game that I got significant playing time. And the kicker through that whole thing is my mom didn't travel to real far games. So
Right.
it was at Minnesota at the Metrodome, and it wasn't televised.
Oh, no.
Yeah, so my mom didn't even
Oh.
my mom didn't even get to see me play on TV
Oh.
because ESPN was just starting out, so it wasn't
Right.
real huge
Right.
yet. I mean, we had games that weren't even televised. So,
Yeah.
but yeah, so my one game that I actually did
Oh, man.
get to play a little bit, it wasn't even televised. So
That stink. I know my brother lives in St. Louis, and he does a lot of traveling. So I'll be like his play-by-play. And so I'm like, okay, they're on this yard, they're here, they're here. And he'll be, on in a house or doing something like that. He does a lot of AV and stuff like that. And so I'm like, okay, I know you're in someone's house, whatever you're doing, but they're on this yard line, they're on this. Okay. Oh crap. Okay. Now they're here. So I love doing that. Every year I'm like, what do you want? He's like, what do you think? I'm like, all right, Michigan, Michigan. I'm thinking, what do you not have? So, but it is, a cool thing. And so I can't imagine not having it televised. It would have been like, wait, so that's crazy. But what a great experience to be able to play for Bo.
yeah,
And then did you play for Mo too?
I played for Mo.
Okay.
I played for Bo for his last 2 years.
Okay.
And then he retired, but he was still really involved with the program. He had an office in the building and all that. So I still saw him all the time.
Okay.
But Gary Moeller took over, and he was the guy that recruited me out of Ohio anyway. So
Okay.
I liked him to begin with.
Yeah.
He's the one that got me interested in Michigan. So he took over, and I played for him for the last 2 years. Love that guy.
Yeah.
Great,
Yeah.
great, great guy.
Me
That's the
too.
one
He
thing.
kind of got a bad rap. I didn't like that. I was like, wait a minute, he's a great guy.
If it would happen, if it would have happened today, I don't think anything would have happened with it. But
Yeah.
because of
Yeah.
the time period it was just a different era of football. And
Right.
yeah, I mean, I think he got a short end of the deal on that one. But
Right.
you know,
Right. For sure. The Move It or Lose It podcast is proudly sponsored by Disrupting MS Together, designed to help you take control of your wellness while living with multiple sclerosis. Disrupting MS Together aims to increase mobility through functional movement. Coaches Kathy Chester and Molly Witt seek to connect the mind, body, and spirit with guided, focused online workouts and coaching. You'll get targeted workouts sent directly to your email and Q&A sessions with licensed coaches, early access to podcast episodes with experts in the industry, group workout sessions through Zoom, and curated content that you won't find anywhere else. Early bird pricing is only available for the pilot program, so don't wait. Check it out now. The program includes a tremendous amount of benefit from seasoned coaches who also live and thrive with multiple sclerosis. Learn more and take the leap today. Visit www.msdisrupted.com to learn more and snag your spot now while you can. So moving like as far as like now we're talking, let's talk about diagnosis time. So
yeah,
you're diagnosed and what is going through your head? So what you were 27, 20?
27. So actually,
Okay.
even before that, being a former athlete, quote unquote elite athlete playing at the University of Michigan. Even before I got diagnosed, I was still very athletic.
Mhm.
I actually got into triathlons, and I was
Yeah.
running. I was a big time runner. I'd go out and run every day, at least 3 to 5
Okay.
miles every day. So I was training. I completed the Cleveland National City Marathon, and then the following year, I was going to train for the Cleveland Marathon and do a
Uh-huh.
26 mile. And I'm like, I'll try it and see what happens. I'm a big guy, but so I was out training for that, and I was running, and I was probably at about an 8 mile mark on one of our
Uh-huh.
trains, and I just tripped. I tripped and I fell, and
Yeah.
I'm like, man, you got to pick up your feet, man. Why are
Right.
you being so clumsy? So I get up, dust myself off, and I go back into my run, and I finished my run with no problem. But
Right.
then like it just started getting gradually like more and
Yeah.
more tripping. And then, a few months later, that's when my vision just started going all whacked out.
Okay.
I couldn't even see the color red, green, and yellow at a traffic light when I was driving.
Okay.
And then my vision went double, and
Okay.
and I was scared to death. And
Right.
that's when it took them 10 months to diagnose me. But when they finally did, I was actually relieved,
Yeah.
like, because I was like sitting there in limbo for
Right.
almost a year going,
Yeah.
I just want to know what's wrong with me,
And that's a scary part. And I think a lot of people say that when the diagnosis is so iffy and you don't know.
Yep,
It's like that at some point it's like I just need to know what it is.
yep,
And there's that relief. Okay, now I know I don't like it, but at least I know what I'm up against.
yep. Absolutely. I agree with you 100%. And then when I got diagnosed by my doctor, Dr. Joe Hanna, he diagnosed me, and I just kind of looked at him and I said, okay. I go, no, what now? And he's, I didn't realize how what MS even really was.
Right.
I never had anybody in my family that was ever diagnosed with it, so I never grew up around it. You hear about it, but you always think worst case scenario with MS,
Right.
or you think about people that are in a wheelchair.
Right.
I mean, it's just kind of like it with any other kind of disease
Sure.
or disability. You think about somebody that has autism, you think
Right.
about severe autism. I mean,
Right.
there's people on the spectrum that are brilliant. You know,
Absolutely.
my my stepdaughter is on the autism spectrum, and she is going to be a pharmacist. So
Yeah.
just because you're diagnosed with something, it doesn't mean that there's not a label for it of what you're going to be.
100%.
I got diagnosed with MS. I looked at my doctor and I'm just like, all right, all right, now we know what it is. What do we got to do?
Right. Exactly.
And he said, we got to get you on a drug. I'm like, all right, let's do it. And I asked him, and being athletic and, liking to run and work out and all that, I asked him, I'm like, so what do I have to do? Do I have to stop working out and doing all that? And he said, no. He said, but you'll know when to stop.
Yeah. Interesting. That's very interesting. Because back then doctors were saying, no exercise. So that's really cool that he said that.
He like I said, he was only 10 years older than me.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like he was like a 50-year-old doctor talking to a 26-year-old kid.
Yeah.
I mean, he was in his 30s, just really starting out. So I think he was like kind of like the new wave of MS doctors. And, he told me, Brian, he goes, you can do whatever you want. He said, your body's going to tell you when you can't.
Yeah.
And I lived my life like that. I still was going to the gym. I was getting, I wasn't running anymore. I couldn't do it. I had to give it up, but I was still going. I was getting on an elliptical for 30 minutes and going 3.5 miles on an elliptical because I had the support with my hands, and I was just killing my legs because I wanted my legs to stay strong.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I'm at that point where you are now, where my legs are tripping. And so I started that ironically. So that was one of the things I was going to ask you. And then I said, we'll just start it. Is I didn't start running until after I was diagnosed. So one of the things, I know it's weird. One of the things I was told by an older person that had MS back then, the infusion center was just huge. And you had people that had everything, cancer, MS, all sorts of stuff. And she was older and she said, try something you've never done before. Because oftentimes with MS, we look at the stuff that we could do and we continue to try. And it's depressing because we can't do it as well as we could. So try something you've never done. Now, I don't think she meant try running, but that's what I thought, why not? So I did, and I didn't tell anyone because back then, as you know, we didn't talk about it. So I didn't tell anyone I had MS, but I just ran. Finally, we went, we would go out after and we went to grab, some dinner after. And I said, they said, man, you trip a lot. And I said, yeah, I think I ought to say that I have multiple sclerosis. And no one really knew, but they were like, so after years, they were like, we need to like pad you up, like do like padding all around so that when you trip, we know you're safe. So I had to give up like the marathons, that had to be like, I had to give that up. So now I just try to get a mile in.
That blows me away that you were running after diagnosis.
I know.
And
triathlons. I'm like, well, I'll try a triathlon. So
that is so amazing. That is an amazing accomplishment with this disease.
Well, that's why it's move it or lose it. Cause I just feel like, not that hardcore anymore. I'm not, but it's like, I always feel like whatever we don't move, we're losing. And I just think of my body, what am I okay losing? And nothing. So even if I can't do the things, and that's what's so important to me with MS is maybe I can't do things the way I did, but there's a different way of moving some of those muscles.
Yeah.
And so, I don't want that MS hug. I don't want that. And, so there's so many different ways. So you stayed, even now, you still you still stay active in the way that you can, which I think is remarkable that you still, you got it in the beginning, you understood, and you understand today that without that, you understand that movement is our medicine and you still continue, which I think is so awesome and is such a great thing. So I'm going to leave us there, Brian, and we're going to come back to our next spot. So, now that we know that you are a Michigan player, play with Bo, and, we'll come back to the rest of your story. So, thank you so much for joining me for another episode of the Move It or Lose It podcast. It would mean the world to me if you subscribed and left a review. Remember, you can find me on Apple, Spotify, Stitcher, and YouTube. New episodes of the Move It or Lose It podcast air every other Wednesday. If you have any suggestions for future guests or topics, please visit my website at www.msdisrupted.com. Until next time.